Good morning. Y'all do, if you will, remember to pray for Sheila. Didn't have to do that at all before I got up here. Pray for Sheila. She's had to go back to the doctor, and she's turned into a sinus infection. So pray for her. And we was able to go to Wayne Sexton's funeral, and their grandchildren really had good testimonies of Brother Wayne, and appreciate the testimonies that they had. And we need to build our testimony for our loved ones. When we've gone on, they can look back and see that we live for God, and it carries on. And I believe they touched some people able to say how He had touched them in their lives. So we'll begin in number 2 on the lesson. We covered the realm of Persian power in number 2. Now we're on. Anybody else need an outline? Need one up here, brother? The revelation of a wicked ruler. Of course, we're talking about King Ahasuerus. He was a wicked ruler because he had a wicked heart. Esther reveals about his heart in Esther 1, 10, 11, 12. On the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded the 7 chamberlains that served in the presence of Ahasuerus the king. Now, my Bible don't read different than yours. I just didn't say all those names. Number 11, to bring Vashti the queen before the king with the crown royal, to show the people and the princes her beauty, for she was fair to look on. Verse 12, but the queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commandment by his chamberlains. Therefore the king was very wroth, and his anger burned in him. We need to understand that he didn't just want her to come in, walk around, turn around. She was going to come in and show her body. Okay, that's what he wanted her to do. This scene at the feast reveals 4 conditions of the heart of Ahasuerus: an adulterous heart, an alcoholic heart, an angry heart, and an arrogant heart. Now, these 4 sins were prevalent in the Persian Empire. They were prevalent in the Roman Empire, and it brought the Roman Empire down. And they're prevalent in the United States today. You think about these things, you think about the United States today: adulterous, alcoholic, angry, arrogant. That fits a lot of people, especially the last 2. And it still brings men and women down today just like it did back then. His wicked heart led to him issuing an illicit command. A is an illicit command. Now, we know through history that the king had a harem of women, and he continually added to that harem of women. John G. Butler wrote, Ahasuerus could not control his passions in regard to women. He had a large harem and kept adding to it. And it's not just one historian, but it's a well-known historical fact. The king had built a great citadel or fortress there in Shushan. And although he was able to build that, he was able to build his army, but he couldn't build his character because he failed to control his passions. One thing that we need to build is our character. We can build an empire. We can start a business and get rich. We can do all kinds of things. We can build a big family, but we need to build our character. As Christians, we should have a Christian character. Number 1, he was encouraged. He was encouraged by alcohol. That's not in the outline. After 7 days of drinking, remember he had a 180-day party, and then he had 7 more days of feasting with his closest senators, or whatever you want to call them. counselors. We're reminded that alcohol leads to the breakdown of control over our own spirit. Proverbs 16:32, he that is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he that ruleth his spirit than he that taketh a city. We need to have control over our spirit. As Christians, we should have control of our actions, our emotions, our spirit, and that we don't allow our feelings to get ahead of our brain and cause us to do things we had not ought to do. Proverbs 25:28, he that hath no rule over his own spirit is like a city that is broken down without walls. And as Christians, that should not be said about us, but we should control our spirit and that would help us to control our tongue. Tongue's hard to control. And if your spirit gets out of control, your mind gets out of control, your tongue, it's gone. You have no hope then. It's going to say what it wants to say. When a man is given over to alcohol and lust, he will make wicked demands of others. Ahasuerus demanded this of the queen, his wife, be paraded around before these leaders to show her a nudity. And we know of the toxic effects of alcohol on people's minds and how it, but the approval ratings of alcohol and drugs seem to increase continually. Marijuana, for example, has gained significant popularity. 59% of Americans believe that marijuana should be legal for recreational use. Get to the right. Immoral culture. I'm out of line here somewhere, but anyway. I missed something. I'll tell you what's happened. It didn't update. It didn't update. I've got some graphs in there that didn't update to show you different numbers. I can't pull it up right now. But it's very high in the amount of people that believe. First of all, 8% of the population, see if I can get this right. 8% of the population, that's not right. I will tell you this. 51% of the people in jail are there because of the influence of alcohol and drugs. 59% of the people in prison are there because of the influence of alcohol and drugs. Without it, they wouldn't have done what they did. And I had some other numbers, but it didn't update in the system. Maybe we'll show it to you next week. The Bible warns repeatedly against drunkenness. Proverbs 20:1, wine is a mocker, strong drink is raging, and whosoever is deceived thereby is not wise. There's a Japanese proverb, first the man takes a drink, then the drink takes a drink, then the drink takes the man. Now, you may not be legally drunk after the first drink, but you are absolutely under the influence. Yeah, you know, they may say, what is it, 0.08 is illegal. If you go over that, you're legally drunk. But guess what? 0.08, you're under influence. 0.07, 0.01, you are under the influence of alcohol. Yes, your body, your mind has more control over it than it does if that number goes up, but it is still influencing the person that is drinking at 0.01. You may overcome it, you may not do something stupid, but it is influencing your mind. The consumption of alcohol brings thoughts, actions, and habits that you don't want to have. And another statistic that I remember from the chart that I had, there are more people, this is one I didn't sort of shock me, there are more people that daily use marijuana in the United States than daily take a drink of alcohol. And as soon as they start on that stuff, they're under the influence. Proverbs 21:17. He that loveth pleasure shall be a poor man. He that loveth wine or oil shall not be rich. The king's wicked behavior was encouraged by alcohol. And he was already a wicked man. But then he's drunk. So it just gets worse. Alcohol promotes irrational behavior. Number 2, it was advanced by anger. Esther 1:12. Again, tells us that the queen refused to come when he demanded her to. She refused to make a spectacle of herself, and the drunken king was enraged with his uncontrollable temper. Now, he made a rash decision to remove the queen from being queen. When people are controlled by their anger, they make foolish, hasty decisions. And you know that yourself. If you allow your anger, without being influenced by anything, if you allow yourself to be angry, it's very easy to make a rash decision that you would not have made had you controlled your temper. James 1:20 says, "For the wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God." Don't make decisions when you're mad. You'll make the wrong decision almost every time. You might not make a completely wrong decision, but you'll make a better decision if you'll wait and cool down. The king's illicit command for his wife was birthed in drunken anger. Sadly, it was tolerated in an immoral culture. Now, those statistics I said about marijuana. When I was a teenager, that would have been crazy. There's no way that'll ever happen in the United States, that many people. Well, in an immoral culture, legislature is saying that it's legal to do this. Of course, now we all know when we were younger, you never would have thought that it would have been legalized. No matter how much you saw people how many people you thought might have used it, you wouldn't have thought that it would have been legalized. In many states now, it's legalized for you to have for recreational use. Of course, they do it the same reason they allow alcohol is because they control the dispensing of it. It's a very nice name. It's a dispensary, right? That's where you get your marijuana, is a dispensary. You see these signs, you got plants on the outside of it, dispensary. Don't say nothing about marijuana, does it? They want it to sound good. That's the reason the liquor store don't say, get your liquor here. It says ABC. Right? So it's just made available because of our culture today, how immoral it is. And that's what we're coming up to now is B. Let me get back to the right place. An immoral culture. Now, pagan cultures have always sexually objectified women, and this is true currently in our country. It's true historically, but Christ did not do that. Christ elevated women in society. He didn't put them down. He elevated women. As Paul wrote to the church in Galatia in the first century, he emphasized the value of women. Galatians 3:28. There is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither bond nor free, there is neither male nor female, for ye all are one in Christ Jesus. The male is not better than the female. The female is not below the male. And wherever the gospel of Christ has been preached and obeyed throughout the world, women find liberation and respect. When it is obeyed, women find liberation and respect. Too often, men have the attitude, I'm the king of my house and my wife is going to do what I say. The only way a man can truly be the king of the house is if he makes the wife the queen of the house. Ahasuerus treated Vashti, who was the queen, like she was a member of his harem. He treated her like trash. But that was accepted. Throughout the world today, all over the world, people objectify women and put them down. because I guess the male is the stronger sex. That's what happens, and it's wrong. Christian husbands should treat their wives as the bride given to them by God and as someone he values greatly. A husband and wife become one. You can't do that when the husband considers the wife of lesser value. You can't make that bond of being one. When you consider the wickedness and degradation of women in this Persian Empire, the sovereignty of God in using Esther, a woman, as a hero makes this story even more remarkable. So here is an immoral culture that is demoralizing women, yet it is a woman that was a hero for the Jews. The number 3, the reasoning of ungodly men. That's sort of an oxymoron. Reasoning of ungodly men. There is no reasoning of ungodly men. And we've seen it down through the Bible, different men. Pharaoh, with the children of Israel, not letting them out of Egypt. Korah, after they had got out of Egypt, and he rebelled against God, rebelled against Moses, and God swallowed him up. Amnon, rebelling against King David, and he died. Solomon's son, Rehoboam, for taking advice from his friends. The wise counselors that Solomon had placed there to help his son said, don't do this. And his friends said, do this, make it hard on them. And of course, because of that, he lost 10 out of the 12 tribes, went to Israel, and he only had the 2 tribes left. So there is disastrous results when we follow ungodly regulation in our life. King Ahasuerus made unreasonable requests of his wife. After being asked to humiliate herself, she refused. The refusal of Queen Vashti. Women were forbidden in the banquet where the men were, and they had their own banquet. And so they went and called her out of that and wanted her to come into the men's party, but of course she refused. So that is what started the problem here, or rather added to the problem in Shushan. Haman was already mad at Mordecai. Now you have Ahasuerus is mad at, Ahasuerus is mad, and later Haman gets mad at Mordecai, and it's this ungodly thoughts that continue increasing and causing more problems. And then we have the consultation with advisors. So Ahasuerus, he's got his 7 advisors there, and so he's mad, and he goes to them, and of course, they're ungodly, drunken advisors. So it just gets worse. Esther 1:13 through 15, then the king said to the wise men, which knew the times, for so was the king's manner toward all that knew law and judgment, and the next unto him was his 7 princes of Persia and Media, which saw the king's face, and which sat the first in the kingdom. What shall we do unto the queen Vashti according to law, because she had not performed the commandment of the king Ahasuerus by the chamberlains? So he consulted with his advisors. He was clearly in the wrong, yet he made it sound like she's done this great misdeed. Well, he was the one that was wrong to start with. Now, they knew who they were speaking to, the most powerful man in the world, probably the most powerful man that had ever been in the world. So they know what he wants, so what are they going to tell him? They're going to agree with him because they're drunken, ungodly men advising a drunken, ungodly man. Christians today may be tempted to tell, like these counselors did, they told the king what they wanted to hear. We may be tempted to tell people what they want to hear, but we don't need to do that. We need to tell them the truth. We're too worried about being censored or canceled, as our culture calls it today. I don't know if you remember studying about Hugh Latimer when we studied, can't even think of the word now, when we studied those that were killed for the cause of Christ. He was summoned once, or he had to preach once in front of King Henry VIII. And King Henry VIII was known for putting people to death, but it didn't change his message. Now, Henry VIII didn't have him killed. I guess he saved that later for Mary the First, and she had him killed. But he didn't change his message for either one of them. And we don't need to change our message because of who we're in front of or who we're around. And we know today there is ungodly reason in our world. You think about the situation, the things that are prevalent in the election coming up. And we know why we're going to vote for who we're going to vote for. We're going to vote for the one. Now, I wish we could say we're going to vote for the president that is against killing all babies. Well, we don't have that choice. But we do have one that is against killing less. That's terrible to have to choose from killing some babies or killing more babies, right? So we have to choose for that. There's other things that we have to choose in an ungodly culture. We do still have the opportunity to vote, so we have to vote for the one that's closest to what is godly. Now, I don't believe either one running for president is saved. But one is closer, does have, or at least running on their platform. I don't know if they actually think that it is actually right, or simply that one is on this, one is completely pro-abortion. So in order for the other one to get votes, he has to be somewhat against abortion. And a lot of the reason you have two different sides is simply, they're going to stand on that, so I'm going to stand on this and get the other side. It's not that they're great people, it's they want votes. But we have to vote for the one that's going to present God's side the closest to it. That's all we have the choice of. But with all the different things that in our culture today that are just absolutely crazy. I've heard all kinds of numbers, upwards of 200 different genders. How would you ever keep up with it? How could you even in your mind think that would be possible? You can only prove two. There's no proof of three. But you're saying there's 200 and whatever. It's ridiculous. And God only made two. May we have the boldness to speak truth no matter what kind of power the enemies of truth may have. So then talking about the command of the king. After the king's pointless meeting with his advisor, he's made a rash command. We're going to skip a couple. We're going to read more verses, but we'll go down to chapter 1, verse 17. For this deed of the queen shall come abroad unto all women, so that they shall despise their husband in their eyes when it shall be reported. The king Ahasuerus commanded Vashti the queen to be brought in before him, but she came not. So they're making such a large deal about this because they're saying, well, if we don't do something about it, then no man's wife is going to obey him. So they're going to make a rash decision here. Likewise shall the lady of Persia and Media say this day unto all the king's princes which have heard the deed of the queen, thus shall there arise too much contempt and wrath. If it please the king, let there go a royal commandment from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and the Medes, that it be not altered, that Vashti come no more before the king Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal estate unto another that is better than she. And when the king's decree which he shall make shall be published throughout all his empire, for it is great, all the wives shall give their husbands honor, both to great and small. A wife doing whatever her husband says is not giving honor. And the saying pleased the king and the princes, and the king did according to the word of Memucan. For he sent letters into all the king's provinces, into every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language, that every man should bear rule in his own house, and that it should be published according to the language of every people. These 7 counselors just simply agreed with the king to do this. They knew how to flatter the king, figure out what he wants and give it to him. That keeps them in power. So what do our politicians do today? Figure out what keeps them in power. And that's what they do. Their foolish advice given out of selfish motives encouraged the king to make his command. We'll pick up here next week. Let's go ahead and close out in prayer. Lord, we thank you for this day that you've given us. Lord, we pray, Lord, that you would help us, Lord, as Christians, Lord, to make godly decisions, Lord, that we would seek your counsel, Lord, that we'd keep our spirit under control, we keep our temper under control, and Lord, that we would search your counsel, Lord, and not the counsel of man. In Jesus'